to listen to what he's saying and realize that a lot of these things that he's saying are actually been confirmed even more as we've gathered more material. And what we need to do is start a renaissance in the academic world to going back to these ancient sources and reassess them with a more objective way of thinking rather than the biased Enlightenment methodologies that came in and have stopped us from actually looking at this source material in a more objective way. We've been too engrossed in source criticism, too engrossed in form criticism, not to rely upon this kind of evidence, which is fatal if we're going to do proper historical reconstruction of how the New Testament came to be. So he says, I have taken these witnesses to the credibility of the four Gospels from the epoch prior to Irenaeus and Tertullian, and just at the threshold of Irenaeus' period, the 2nd and 3rd decades after the middle of the 2nd century. There are, however, left to us other witnesses much earlier, and like those just quoted, men who speak to us right from the very bosom of the Church. Between the apostolic epoch and that which followed there intervened the so-called apostolic fathers. For as direct disciples of the apostles, they must be reckoned as in immediate connection with the apostolic age. If in the little which these men have left us we do not find anything which can be constructed as definite testimony as to the authenticity of the Gospels, still we are not to conclude from their silence that the Gospels were not in existence before their time. But should there be in their writings a constant use of the Old Testament and not the slightest use of the New, in spite of the fact that the later say much nearer to hand, the probability must be accepted as great that at that time the Gospels were not accepted as of equal weight with the Old Testament. And this appears to have been the case with the Epistle of Romans Clement, written in the 2nd or 3rd decade before the close of the 1st century, and about a decade after the destruction of Jerusalem. At that time no canon of Gospel was in existence. It is indeed unquestionable that in his epistle, rich in quotation of the Old Testament, Clement refers here and there to passages in the Pauline epistles which have indeed chronologically prior over the Gospels, though not in any other sense. It is otherwise with those other constituents of this literature to whose discussion we now come, the epistles of Ignatius and that of Polycarp. The first of these have reached us in extent variously edited. 3 extant only in Latin are manifestly later additions to the older literature, and so too are 5 others written in Greek, Latin, and Armenian, their authenticity being disowned by the fact that Eusebius makes no allusion to them. There are besides 7 epistles which are extant in longer and shorter form. Of the longer ones, there is also an ancient Latin version of the shorter, a Latin version in the Syriac, and Armenian one as well. With this to be joined the fact that 20 years ago, Syriac version of the 3 of these 7 epistles was discovered, more brief than the short Greek text. After the debate respecting the longer and shorter epistles had been decidedly settled in favour of the shorter, the question arose whether the 3 extant in the Syriac translations are not to be preferred to these even shorter ones. When several scholars declared themselves in favour of this, others defended the earlier origin of the 7 Greek epistles, insisting that the 3 in Syriac were a mere extract intended for devotional use. We hold this to be a more correct view. Similar occurrences are not unknown in the apocryphal writings of the New Testament. An extraordinary proof in this case is afforded by the circumstances that these 7 epistles are not only recognized by Eusebius in 336, but are alluded to in the letter of Polycarp. In order to escape the force of this testimony, the most decisive passage in the later epistle, defended as it is by Eusebius himself, must be set aside as unauthentic. Besides this, the assigning of the superior value of the 3 Syriac letters is invalidated by the fragmentary character of many passages. One is so manifestly an extract from the Greek text that it must be admitted that one section has been lost through carelessness of the copyist. Just a little note here. A Bishop Lightfoot, a 19th century scholar, did a lot of work on these letters. So if you want to, and even now, they're classic pieces of writing. So if you want to know more about Polycarp and these earlier letters of Clement and all the rest writings. You know, go and read Bishop Lightfoot on Apostolic Fathers, and you'll get some helpful material there. We claim the right, says Tischendorf, therefore, of holding to the authenticity of the 7 epistles ascribed by Eusebius Polycarp to Ignatius, and written while he was on his way from Antioch through Smyrna and Troas to his martyrdom at Rome. Examining them with reference to our present theme, we find several allusions to Matthew and John. Take this passage, letter to the Romans, chapter 6, for what is man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Taken literally from Matthew 16. In like manner, the passage in